Hello interwebs, Stitch Master Murray here, and today I am going to teach you how to use your machine to sew a buttonhole and sew on a button. In order to teach you how to make a buttonhole today, I took an old t-shirt and cut it in two pieces that have two layers on them, and then I sewed 1 inch on the folded edge to kind of mimic the button area of a shirt. I don't have the formal terminology for that one. And I picked out a button. I'm using a really big one because I think visually it'll be easier to film. So that's our button. So I usually put the two sides of the fabric right next to each other because it makes it easier to make sure that they line up perfectly. I get my disappearing ink marker and I'm gonna put the button right where I want it. Mark right where that is, on the side where the button will be. And then I will mark across on the top layer. Now that we have everything marked off, we're gonna stop and grab a separate piece of scrap fabric of the same fabric. It's really important that it's the same fabric because every fabric responds differently to being sewn. And when you do your test run, you want to make sure everything's in order. So you're going to get out your buttonhole foot, which looks like this. Up front, it has a place where you attach it to the machine and the little window where the needle sews. And then in the back, there's this slider where you put the button in. And that slider allows the machine to measure a buttonhole that is the perfect length for your button. Technology, eh? So, that was bad. So then we're gonna put that whole dealio with the button and the buttonhole foot onto your machine. There we go, get our buttonhole foot in there. We're gonna grab that scrap fabric. I always put this here, press start, and then realize I didn't change the setting from a straight stitch to the buttonhole stitch, which means it's just gonna sew a normal line. So don't make the mistakes I make. You will at some point, it's unavoidable, but we're all trying our best, right? My machine has a start-stop button. If you don't have a start-stop button, you'll just use the pedal until it's done, I think. Honestly, I've been sewing on my machine so long that I have to admit I'm not super proficient in any other machine, but this is how we do it on my machine. So there we go. Just press. Oh, okay, here's another thing I always forget. The way that this works is that there's a little foot here that attaches, and then when it hits this measuring device that's built in, it stops. And that's the reason why this can dictate how wide the buttonhole is. So you don't want to forget to pull down this little lever, assuming your machine works the same way as mine. I think it's all pretty uniform. All right. So now bring that lever back up, pick up the foot, cut the strings, and this is what we're left with. It basically zigzags a very thin rectangle. That looks great. I don't think we need to make any changes to the machine. Once your buttonhole is at this point, the only thing left to do is open it up. And the trick here is if you rip any of these stitches, this casing that we just sewed will unravel. And if you push with you use a seam ripper for this, and if you push too hard through one end and open this up again, it'll unravel. So what I like to do, and what I was taught to do, is you start on one side and then poke it through the middle, and then you slowly push that through right? So you have about half done. And then you do the other side. That way you're less likely to accidentally push through one of the ends. And when you do it bit by bit, it's also less likely that you'll cut into one of those sides. Okay, so there's your buttonhole. Now let's test. Let's also make sure that's the right size. Yep, look at that, perfect. Okay, so this buttonhole is 1 1/8 inch. So now that we've done our test, we bring back the actual piece that we want to sew. And where we marked this line, we now know that the end buttonhole is going to be 1 1/8 inch. So we're going to mark about, what would that be, like 9/16 of an inch on both sides? You can just do a 1/2 inch. I get pretty particular. So that you know that the buttonhole is going to be perfectly centered where this button is sewn. Another really good reason to do a test run, which I forgot to mention, is because it'll tell you which direction your machine sews a buttonhole. I think most of them start backwards. Mine starts backwards, which means that this mark that you made, you're going to want to start it on the bottom. Remove your buttonhole foot, because we're done with that for now. Put back in your normal foot. So I don't know if this is the right way to do this or what's up, but this is the way that I've come to do this. It's a little bit of a self-taught method. So, all right, what I do is I put my machine on a zigzag stitch, and I bring the length down as far as it'll go, which means that instead of zigzagging forward, it'll just zigzag in place. And then I bring down the stitch width until I test it and I can see that the zigzag is falling perfectly into each of these holes. You have to be really careful using this method, because if you don't make absolute sure that you have everything set up right, you can break the button and probably break your needle. Okay, so I use the hand wheel to start it off. So it's just gonna tie off here. Okay, so now it's gone to the right, which means we're gonna find out if we have it on the right width. Oh, and look at that, it's perfect. So then once I know that it's good, I'll use the pedal a couple times and then have the machine tie it off again. That's how I machine sew buttons. At this point, I like to get rid of all the little threads so that it looks nice and clean. And voila! You have yourself a button and a buttonhole.